Hello, it's Sam, and I'm talking about the June 2019 Vedic Astrology forecast. Pile-up of planets in Gemini. Mars is going to move into debilitation. We have a prelude to the upcoming eclipses, and of course the Saturn K2 conjunction also tightens. So we have a we're going to start. Here's June 1st, and as you see at the beginning, we start with the moon here. Let me just go back a couple hours. I like to start in the middle of the day. I'm going to go through like every day here. So as you see, we have a Moon-Venus conjunction pretty much right together in Aries at the very beginning of the month. And so the first day of the month on June, this will be on Saturday. There'll be a strong Moon-Venus in Aries connection. So again, Aries is about the individual, ruled by Mars. So we're going to start off, with a lot of that sort of fiery, passionate individuality to start off the month. But it'll be joined Venus, so there could be a lot of desire for partnerships and things like that to start off as this kind of, maybe sort of back and forth a little bit, individuality of Mars and the connection and the communion of Venus starting off. And then we get to a new moon that's going to be coming. As you see, this is happening on the 14th lunar day, Chaturdashi. That means 14th day. And by the way, I just want to say, if those, if you're interested in seeing how these things will happen every day for you, I do talk about this, but I do have a daily forecast that are done in great detail where I talk about the sign, nakshatra, tithi, or the lunar day, not just full moons and new moons, but the everyday, and also the aspects and the conjunctions. And you can try it for 2 weeks and see if you like it. I'll at the Astrology Training Lab link there. And so, again, every day there's a unique energy that never repeats. And, of course, this is based on the sidereal astrology of India. Again, in every Indian astrology text, the zodiac is sidereal. Back into the Vedas and the mists of time, they always measured objects moving through the sky. The sky is sidereal. Earth going around the sun, that's not sidereal. And it's also not the zodiac. And so what we now call tropical zodiac is taking that calculation and projecting that into the sky. But India never did that. That happened much later with the Persians and whatnot. And so now we are, of course, clearly using the sidereal zodiac where the nakshatras and the rashis are totally aligned, okay? So they're the same section of sky. So again, we're starting off here with Venus-Moon conjunction in Aries on June 1st, right? And then on June 2nd, I want to make this days, okay. Then on June 2nd and 3rd, for the most part, the 2nd and 3rd, the moon moves into Taurus, where it's going to be exalted, and also it'll also be joined the sun, which is, of course, creates the new moon. So we'll have a new moon on June 3rd. Here's June 2nd, where the moon is in Rohini Nakshatra, and actually the Amavasya, or the new moon, happens on probably the 2nd and the 3rd, depending on where you live in the world. But again, sun, moon, and Taurus, this starts that cycle of Taurus this year, which is about that grounding, connection to the earth and whatnot, but on and those things that are stable and solid in your life. So on June 2nd and 3rd, there will be a lot of that Taurus energy, that grounded Taurus earthy quality. So you'll find, comfort in your relationships and the people in your life, things like that. It'll be a time to really connect with that. And that also includes things like your, where you find happiness and joy in life. And so there's also an aspect from Jupiter, especially on June 3rd. Jupiter is casting a very exact aspect onto the moon. So when Jupiter aspects the moon, it's very important for guru and teachers, higher wisdom. So June 3rd, definitely big for that, that quality of life, for study and whatnot. And again, the planets are in good dignity here because the moon is in its exalted sign, and Jupiter is also really powerful here in Scorpio. So this is a very auspicious day here, June 3rd. Exalted moon, Jupiter in Scorpio, aspecting. And, we also have Mercury. We're starting off with Mercury in Gemini. On the 1st, Mercury moves into Gemini where it's in its own sign. So we're also blessed to be having Mercury in Gemini for the first couple weeks, first several weeks here, 2.5 or 3 weeks or so. Mercury is here in Gemini. So that's also good for thinking and learning and unraveling and figuring things out. Okay, so June 3rd, moon in Taurus, aspected by Jupiter, quite nice. Now on the 4th and the 5th, the moon is in Gemini, and we start seeing this sort of pile up a little bit here, especially when the sun also gets there. But when Venus and the sun get there. But in particular, we have on the 4th and 5th, Mercury, Mars, Moon, and Rahu. Now again, this is getting near the eclipse. It's kind of a foreshadowing of the eclipse energy that's coming, and all this Gemini energy means that this day will be good for speech, communication, trying new things, thinking about a new paradigm shifts. But it's also joined Mars. So the fact that Mars is in Gemini now shows how there could be some arguing and battling and struggling over ideas now, especially since Mars went into Gemini a couple weeks ago. Rahu is in Gemini as well now. So there's a lot of sort of battling over ideas, and especially getting down to the truthful ideas, the pure ideas, the ones that are true and not just a bunch of false beliefs. Now again, this Ketu Saturn in Sagittarius shows where a lot of our false beliefs are being pressured and destroyed now. So Rahu in Gemini is compelling us to actually seek good information. So again, these could be big themes here on the 4th and 5th as the moon goes through Gemini. It's joined Mercury, who's in his own sign, so we're thinking pretty clearly. We should see some good information on the 4th and 5th, right? But it's also with Mars, which is kind of frustrating, so we might be fighting and battling over the information. Resist the temptation to do that. Don't argue with idiots. One of the things you learn eventually in life, took me a long time to learn, don't argue with idiots. It doesn't mean you don't clarify what idiots are saying, because you have to. You have to stand up for things and speak the truth and come out with it, but don't waste your time on them, on people who can't be bothered to learn things correctly or whatnot. Don't get sucked into battles. Don't get sucked into arguments, especially these days with internet trolling and all this kind of stuff. People are always trying to suck you into a battle, especially if they don't know what they're doing, and the only thing they have is an internet battle or an internet fight or argument. Many people that, again, can't bother to research things. I get trolled all the time, and I don't bother with them. I don't argue with them. I don't bother with it if they can't be bothered to learn. I'm happy to discuss anything, but I'm not going to get into stupid challenges and arguments, especially when people, usually the ones that do that, can't be bothered to actually be thoughtful and learn something correct, right? So be aware of that. I'm not saying it's just for me. I'm saying it for you, okay? Notice where people might be trying to goad you into an argument. Don't fall for it, because that's all they have. They're happy and they're fine when they're trolling and when they're making it about, you against them, who's right, me or you, and then they can just say anything. But again, that's just a personal struggle. They have no leg to stand on when you're talking about truth and facts, because facts aren't about two individuals. So try to keep this in mind and try to keep this straight. You'll see people, for example, our president does this all the time. Instead of being informed about issues, he turns everything into a personal battle. Him against, low energy Jeb or little Marco or crooked Hillary, instead of ever discussing issues, he'll attack people. So again, this is what people do to try and win arguments that they're not equipped for. They turn it into a personal battle. Again, these are very important issues right now. Notice them. Notice the difference between actually learning something, and notice if you're doing it. Notice how much you pay more attention to who the person is saying something and whether or not you like the person, and not as much attention to the data and the information that's being conveyed, particularly in this internet age. In this internet age, we're very seduced by an internet personality rather than facts, because sometimes the best facts aren't being put on the popular internet channel, quote. So keep those things in mind and notice this early in the week and going forward, because Mars is going to be in Gemini for the next few weeks. Rahu is also there. Is Mars, Rahu, and Gemini. We're going to have eclipses there. That's why I'm hanging out in this Gemini. I said there's the pileup in Gemini. This is part of the pileup because the moon is here, but you can see 10 days later the sun's going to go there. So it's kind of a prelude to a lot of this eclipse foreshadowing, because this is where the eclipses are happening. So again, June 4th and 5th, notice these issues come up and be on guard. Be on guard and get ready for more of it, because Mars gets closer to Rahu. Mercury is still there. You stay more Mercury and kind of laugh at the drama, laugh at the potential triggering, and let the triggered stay triggered. Don't let their trigger hit you with a bullet. Instead, you can be like in the Matrix, right? You can be the ninja where they're triggered and firing a bullet, and you're just dodging it and going, "Goodbye, bullet. I think I'll fire a bullet of truth out into the world, or arrows of truth out into the world, and dodge your bullets of ignorance." Okay, so now we have June 6th and 7th. For the most part, June 6th and 7th, quite good, because moon is then in Cancer. Okay, June 6th and 7th, and then into the 8th as well. But mainly the 6th and 7th. Now, again, the moon is the ruler of Cancer, and Cancer is, that sign of beauty and emotional strength and, heart-centered wisdom that is, connected to that ocean of love that is our true nature. So rather than being knocked around on the waves of emotion, sink deep into the heart on these days, June 6th and 7th. And again, you can see how these signs build, because when we get into stupid triggering arguments and stuff like that in Gemini, and we get too stimulated in Gemini with our interest or whatever it is, then again, when the moon goes into Cancer, then we're feeling all of the aftermath of that, the wake. This is why Cancer comes after Gemini, because Gemini is about interest, ideas. How do those interests and ideas feel in your heart? That's why Cancer comes at that point, because we need to check in with the heart and see how those things feel. So again, sink deeper than the heart. Don't create problems the previous couple days where now when the moon's in Cancer, you're going to feel regret, you're going to feel bad, and you're going to feel weird because you lost your heart space. And by the way, I'm saying things like, I'm not trying to be insulting to people who want to goad you in fights and arguments. It's unfortunate that people do that. I don't have any dislike for them personally. It's just a dislike for the thing. So again, I'm sort of making a joke, but I have compassion for people who are doing their best, but just can't be bothered to learn things and whatnot. I get it. But again, you have to make a choice to not hate them or anything, but just not bother with it. You just don't let it hook you. Again, that's the greatness of Gemini. Is like, no, not going to get hooked in that. No, I don't need to do that. This is a great way to be in Gemini, to find those things that are intelligent, that are correct, and explore things that have meaning and that are worthwhile. Then when the moon goes into Cancer, your heart is clean and clear, and you can sink deeper into the truth, right? And recognize the truth, right? So you recognize the true nature of things in Gemini, like, this isn't a real This is just a silly argument. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to stay with the right information and be clean of all that instead of getting down in the muck. Then when the moon goes into Cancer, we got to deal with the muck because we don't escape it. We don't escape muck. And when the moon goes through Cancer, we feel the muck often. So instead of that, go deep into the heart. Great for your meditation, your devotion, your spiritual practice, especially on the 7th, because you see this aspect from Jupiter is here on June 7th. And that's a great day for, the Guru's blessing, Guru's grace, as the moon is getting this one-way aspect from Jupiter, right? And then the moon goes into Leo on June 8th, 9th. For the most part, June 8th and 9th, moon in Leo brings a quality of fiery individuality again after we connect with the heart in Cancer and we feel congruent. Then we want to express that beauty and joy in our heart with everyone and shine brightly in Leo. So those days, the 8th and the 9th, will be great for that. Will be great for that deeper shining and that, enlightenment that is there for us. That we want to empower others with the light of our, wisdom and consciousness and whatnot. I'm going to be doing a retreat that weekend on the 7th, 8th, and 9th. This is on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I'll be doing a retreat with my great friend Mas Vidal, who is also a yoga and Ayurvedic practitioner. We're doing a private retreat. So I'm glad, and I chose it for this time. I chose it for these days. On the 7th, it starts a little earlier. It starts at like 10 a.m., 7th, 8th, and 9th, because start with the moon in Cancer and then Leo. So we first really connect with the heart, then we express and aspire to that highest, purest light. And this is the great thing about this Cancer-Leo section. These are the sattvic signs where we're really trying to connect our limited mind and heart and energy and ego with the divine, cosmic, unlimited mind, heart, and pure self. So that will be a great thing to do that weekend, whether you're on a retreat or not. Do your own kind of purification and sadhana, especially on the 8th and 9th. 8th and 9th with the moon in Leo, great for purification. Then on the 10th, 11th, and into the 12th, the moon is in Virgo. Now this is where we take all that power from Leo and we organize it into the most sensible, coherent, congruent structure so that we can enjoy it and share it in the best way. So Virgo is very much about all those details. It's ruled by Mercury. And it shows where, for those days, 10th, 11th, and into the 12th, again, it's very good for, things like, for example, gardening or writing or organizing things in the best way. That organization is definitely really necessary if we're going to maximize the power from our kingdom and have it be something that benefits everyone. Because so often, the power of our kingdom is something that can overwhelm us, or it can distract us, or it can even create a sort of aversion. As someone who has built sort of a kingdom with a business a little bit, it's so important that you're running your business and your business isn't running you, right? Because some people, they wind up building a life that they dream of or that they want, and then they wind up hating it because they don't know how to delegate authority, or they don't know how to get tasks off their plate, right? So this is what Virgo is. This is the power of Virgo and how Virgo comes after Leo to delegate that authority, and to know how to organize things correctly. Again, I just want to put this link again if you're interested in seeing how each one of these days is, unfolds in real time. I do this comprehensive forecast every day with not just the sign, but also the nakshatra, the tithi, the lunar day. Like this would be Shukla Dashami. This is the 10th day. It's, of course, in the nakshatra of Hasta, which I'm not talking about all the nakshatras. All of this stuff brings that three-dimensional flavor to the day. That's totally unique, right? You don't have this same collection of energies every day, or actually ever. They never repeat. So if you want to do that, you could try it only 50 cents for 14 days to get these daily forecasts. So then, again, halfway through the 12th and then 13th and 14th, the moon is in Libra. Okay, so Libra is the sign that's related to Venus. It's ruled by Venus, and it has that quality of compromise and sharing and wanting to value others equal to ourselves. So that sharing is very important on those days. And we have to make sure to share from a place of strength rather than sharing because we're afraid somebody's not going to like us or something else like that. Instead, we have to share from a place of abundance, not scarcity. Sharing from a place where we're very connected to our own values first. That's what's important on those days of June 12th, 13th, and 14th, right? And one of the big, issues with Libra is often that sort of harmonizing and that sort of balancing of you say this, I say that, you say this, I say that. And again, because like I said, we have a lot of unbalanced energy up here at that time with Rahu Mars are very close. At that time, you see Rahu Mars and Mercury really are sort of colliding around this time. The sun is also about to go there, but you can see how unbalanced the communication might be. Gemini is also very much about harmonizing through ideas. So I'm pointing this out because it could be a time with a lot of triggering and unbalanced styles of speaking and communicating. And you want to be aware on the 12th, 13th, and 14th, again, not to get sucked into drama, not to get sucked into other people's drama. That doesn't mean you don't speak the truth. You keep speaking the truth, you keep showing up with the truth, and you don't get sucked into weird battles or challenges or silliness, right? No reason for that. No reason to have a big charge around it either, right? And so those will be big themes on the 12th, 13th, and the 14th as the moon goes through Libra. Just look at these degrees, right? Rahu 23:42, Mars 24:18, Mercury 20, then the next day 22:18. Look, it's exact. And so this will be important because the moon is also getting close to its debilitation point. And here we have it now, June 15th and 16th, moon very close to Jupiter on the 16th, but we have the debilitated moon here on June 15th and 16th. Again, we're also ready to be triggered, ready to be, you get into our jealousy and all that weird kind of emotional triggering. You want to be careful at that time. Moon is debilitated in Scorpio because, again, we're aware of our vulnerability. We're aware of our lack of control, especially lack of control around the things we love. We love this person, but they might do anything. So we get jealous, or we try to control things, or we, argue with them to try to, win some argument or something like that. And this is the sort of downfall of the moon and the sort of negative quality that can come in Gemini. or I'm sorry, in Scorpio. So that's going to be big on the 15th and 16th. But on the 16th, the moon has also joined that Jupiter, who's retrograde. Now, again, Jupiter is also, he just can tend to make things big at times as well. And that could also mean big jealousies, big drama as well. He could tend to turn things into this big moral issue. How dare you? This is how Jupiter can, at times, Jupiter doesn't really support our, at times he doesn't even really support our relationships and things like that people think, that he's so beneficial for. Sorry, wait a second. Sometimes Jupiter is very, detrimental and damaging because of this, because of this tendency to blow things up, lectures and bypassing. And with Jupiter in Scorpio, we're definitely pursuing our higher teachings and teachers and higher wisdom, and it's making that bigger, and it's helping us dig deeper into things because it's making that area of life bigger and more prominent and all that. But what we always have to be careful of is Jupiter, again, turning things into these big sort of moral issues, these big moral questions, self-righteous, as someone just said. So that's always possible, okay? So again, instead of what we have to do is we study astrology so that we're knowing it. We see the possibility. This is why I always explain the range of potential. This is one of the big things that I, tell my students all the time. You have to explain all of it. You explain the whole range of stuff because both possibilities are there. All possibilities are there. And those possibilities are to connect us with making something big and not conflating emotional drama. And again, that's the thing we have to be careful of with Jupiter is this conflation, right? And this, instead, we want to connect that depth, that Scorpio depth and that Scorpio difficulty with something that's more worthy. So instead of going into the depth of our paranoia, we go into the depth of love and devotion, because that's the deeper quality of Scorpio, okay? And so now, again, this is a whole sort of tricky area of the zodiac here, because we have this after this moon in Scorpio and passing by Jupiter, then we have again now it's on the 17th, 18th, for the most part 17th and 18th, we're going to have moon now in Sagittarius and joined this Ketu and Saturn, right? Especially on the 18th, there's going to be an exact, Ketu Saturn moon conjunction. So after that sort of issue of Scorpio, where our, where we could be triggered and those kinds of difficulties, we have the redemption, hopefully, of Sagittarius. And again, this is one way you can see Jupiter being powerful in Scorpio. It even rules the sign that comes after. So we dig into that depth of Scorpio and cultivate bhakti and devotion and all of those things that come from emotional depth, right? So instead of emotional triggering and drama, it's emotional depth, which leads to devotion and pure love. And we usually get to that higher source because the sign after is Sagittarius, where we're looking for a higher answer. And so hopefully you can ride that moon Jupiter to that deeper source, and then when the moon goes through Sagittarius, you'll feel that Guru's grace flowing in your life for those couple of days, June 18th or June 17th and 18th, right? But we got to remember, we got this K2 Saturn still. Look at that exact degrees now. We're like in it, right? They're exact here. And the moon has joined them exactly on the 18th. And we see this, we'll feel this sort of restriction and this focus and this sort of intensity around our spiritual beliefs and our sort of, potential for bypassing, and all of that will be drawn out and really shown to us on the 17th and 18th. So, just to re-explain here, this whole pileup of Saturn and Ketu in Sagittarius, and again, if you do Western astrology, Pluto is also there, is really showing our, the difference between what we believe and our beliefs about things. We have all kinds of beliefs, but what are we really doing? What are we putting into practice? How much of that hope and belief and philosophy is actualized in our life? How much truth is in, and how much integrity is in all of our philosophies and all of our beliefs? And that can be very painful. And so we're seeing a lot of that now, these shattering of illusions, again, very big now. Saturn and Ketu both shatter things. And Sagittarius is a lot of illusion, especially the illusion that we understand things, this illusion of wisdom. We have a lot of illusions around wisdom. We think because we've read something in a book, somehow that's wisdom. That's not wisdom. That's maybe information. And it's information maybe you believe in, maybe you believe the information, but it's not wisdom. In fact, it's not even benefiting you unless you put it into practice, which then it becomes a kind of experience. And then it doesn't become wisdom unless you do it for a long time. But again, people want to shortcut all of that. They go right for oh yeah, I read this in a book. Now I'm ready to preach it to the world. Now, hallelujah, I have wisdom because I took a class and I heard somebody say, and now I know all about it. So I'm not trying to be harsh about that, but I'm saying this Saturn Ketu is showing the truth about that. It's showing the truth about how much you're preaching and how much you're practicing, how much you're putting into practice. The truth of it. Now, maybe you don't want to see the truth. Again, it doesn't mean we want to see it. This is why it's painful. So all this stuff where people are like, oh, it's so hard. When's it going to stop? It's so painful. Oh. These are people who are recognizing, oh my God, I'm so full of it. That's basically what it is. I'm so full of it. All this stuff I thought, and now I realize how full of it I am. I realize how wrong I was. Make it stop. Make me stop seeing the truth, please. And again, those who have been living very, very congruent with their beliefs, if you've been living very congruent with your beliefs and putting them into practice, guess what? It's actually pretty good for you. Because Saturn and Ketu are focusing. They're bringing a lot of focus. So those people who are living very much in accordance with their principles and their beliefs, it doesn't mean it's not still difficult, but you can make enormous progress at that time, at these times when there's pressure. So then you look at which houses, where this falls and whatnot. For me, it's fallen in my 7th house, which is relationships, right? So you could say I have a lot of ideas about relationships, but how much of it am I really putting into practice and all of that, right? And so I'm seeing that. I'm seeing and I'm like, yeah, okay, these are things I'm not doing as well, and these are things that, yeah, I'm right. And what winds up happening is you have to kind of do one thing or the other. because you'll see the problem with a certain area of life, and then you have to work hard to try to put it into practice, or realize this takes too much work, I'm going to let it go. Because Saturn and Ketu is bringing that. Either work really hard to fix this thing, or realize, ugh, I can't do it. Again, and whether or not you're living in a good way with that thing, you see your nature. Because maybe you really want to work hard to keep that thing going. But it's something that's not really even good for you because it's out of alignment. So there's all kinds of different ways that this plays out right now. And so this is a lot of what's happening here on on June 17th and 18th. And especially as we get the moon joining on the 18th, we'll really feel this in a lot of depth. Okay, we should feel this with a lot of strength and power. Okay, but both days, the 17th and 18th, and even overall, look, these things are grinding to a very, they're very close with each other. So these things I'm describing right now is stuff right now in general that you should be looking at, right? By the way, next month when we have this, it's going to be a lunar eclipse right near this Saturn Ketu. And it'll also be a Guru Purnima. So that's next month. But we're really feeling this Saturn Ketu in Sagittarius, revealing this need to focus and concentrate and see the truth of our beliefs around many different things, particularly the house wherever Sagittarius falls in your ascendant. 17th and 18th will be important days there. Then the 19th and the 20th and into the 21st, Moon is in Capricorn. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. It's that planet of making peace with our fears and our tangible fears, because we have a tendency to worry about our money, our mortality, our death, and until we get a grasp on that, we will keep this strong kind of attachment and not be able to live gracefully, graciously, and other things like that. This is very much a time for introspection and solitude, meditation, working through your deeper emotional stresses and fears and worries. And again, it's not always easy, but it's often very rewarding when the moon goes through Capricorn. I actually don't mind it. It's not the easiest transit because Saturn isn't easy for us. Saturn is, very much about facing those tangible fears. Rahu is our imagined fears, which can be kind of paranoia and jealousy. Saturn are the tangible fears. We know we're going to die. We know we only get so much intelligence and wisdom and love and power, and the awareness of that limitation comes from Saturn. And that facing that limitation is often painful, so we want to avoid it. So this is why we spend so much time avoiding our pain in life. I don't want to face that. When's it going to stop? When can I just be happy and like a child again? I don't want to grow up. I don't want to be an adult. So this whole section, when the moon goes through Capricorn and then Aquarius, which is usually about 5 days, is the time each month where we're being challenged to be an adult. What's it called now? They even have a word for it now. It's called adulting. Adulting. How good are you at adulting? How good are you at it? Tell me. Type it in the box for me. Type it in the box. I want to see how good you are at adulting. What's your most adulting move? This world, this crazy world. Adulting. I'm spending more time adulting these days. Okay. Adulting. Let's see here. All right. So while you all are adulting, I'm kind of the other way. I'm not adulting. I'm kidding. Kidding. Get it? A new one. Kidding. No, there is a thing. It's like adulting, which is, being grown up, being responsible, and it's so obvious, and it's so we're so bad at it that we have to like invent a goofy term because people are. I mean, at least that's a benefit, right? At least it's a benefit that we've realized how in detriment we are to being grown up that we have to invent a kind of, what would that be, an adverb or adjective to describe it? Adulting, yeah, teenaging, or we do say kidding, right? So we understand that, but we all realize that we're so bad at it and that everybody's just like big dumb kids that we have to invent some new term. Yeah, Saturn makes us have it be adulting by proxy. Like you're going to be adulting whether you like it or not, right? So it was probably invented. That term was probably invented by a Capricorn or an Aquarius or someone with like Saturn on their moon or something. So, okay, so again from the 16, or I'm sorry, from the 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Where these are all times for adulting. The 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, those 5 days, yeah, Saturning, that would be better, right? So, on the 22nd and 23rd, though, Saturn goes into Aquarius, and it's Aquarius is where we take that quality of Capricorn, which is about working through our emotional and psychological immaturity, right? People have heard me say this a long time. And we take that emotional, psychological immaturity, and once we work through that, or however well we're able to work through it, then we take that into the world externally and try to make the world a better place, right? And this is the kind of process from Saturn. It starts with some psychological complex we have to work through, and then it goes to something that we then want to share. So notice how this works. It's very important because, a lot of this, even as a principle, as an archetype, has to do with how you would succeed in your work and in your career and taking responsibility, right? A lot of your responsibility comes from how much you've been able to work through your emotional stress and worry, right? You're like, and then after you work through that, that's the thing you want to share with the world, which is Aquarius. So these days here on the 22nd and 23rd is really good to connect with what you want to share and feel yourself as part of the culture and what we're moving toward as a world, right? And things like, the time spent with your gurus or your teachers, and also things in the world like, climate change or, animal rights or other kinds of things that you're really interested in standing for in the world. And a lot of the greatest stuff that we do in ways that aren't just about ourselves. So again, these are all very Saturn themes as well, because we're willing to show up and be humble and make a commitment to things that are bigger than ourselves. And that's a very adult, mature kind of concept. And then the 24th, 25th, 26th, right? Then we have the moon going through Pisces. Pisces is that last sign, even after the social benefit of Aquarius that we want to put forth. Then we want to sort of even leave the world in the Pisces realm. Pisces is where we're not even worrying about showing up to make the world a better place or make a difference in the world or anything like that. We're actually looking to merge with that metaphysical, spiritual self that's beyond all this social benefit and the ups and downs and wins and losses of the world. Because that's really what Aquarius is win some, lose some, but ultimately we're all in it together and we're all going to die and it's not going to last, so let's leave it all better than we found it. And then once we're able to do that, then we're saying, okay, because I'm not really of this world. I'm in this world, but not of this world, which is the Pisces nature. So this 24, 25, 26, very much about that spiritual communion, that metaphysical surrender. But it also takes the form of things like, escapism, and you have to be careful with things like, especially in this modern age, we have a lot of escapist activities like watching a lot of TV or just kind of tuning out or whatever it might be. Of course, there's the getting drunk and high and other kinds of things that people do. Because in Pisces, we're trying to commune with something higher and something bigger. So, and we see that here. We go back. Mars, then I didn't go back and do that. On the 22nd, Mars moves into Cancer. So you see, we had this Gemini pile up here for a while also. So remember, as I was doing it from the 17th, from this time when we had this moon Jupiter in Scorpio, the sun also went into Gemini. So then we had all these planets. So this was that big Gemini pile up I was talking about earlier, why we need to get clear about all the Gemini stuff. Because there's going to be more energy there when the sun joins on the 16th. So again, from the 16th until from the 16th until the 22nd, so that week, there's like 4 planets there, 16th to the 21st. That's 5 or 6 days. There's all those planets there in Gemini. So again, that's a big emphasis here, right? For that arguing and that kind of stuff that I was saying earlier. And then as we see here on the, Mercury moves out on the 21st. So this time when the moon is going through Capricorn and Aquarius, there's also a lot of big shifts with Mercury leaving Gemini, Mars leaving Gemini and going into Cancer. So this is another shift that's happening. That shows kind of a shifting into that other lesson, where it's not just about Gemini and all of the ideas, but then we're starting to get more emotional. In particular, Mercury's not so powerful in Cancer, and Mars is debilitated. So by the time we get up here, especially to the moon in Pisces, there's quite a lot of emotion. There's been a big emotional shift here, and away from more the intellectual focus. And so when we get a lot of planets in a sign and a pile up, like I said, then that energy just becomes very prominent. It's not that complicated. Get a bunch of planets in one sign and those qualities become very prominent. Okay, so a lot of Gemini energy was there for a good couple weeks. Then they start to shift early June. June 21st. We start to see it. 20th and 21st, 22nd. So then by the time the moon is in Pisces, it's much more emotional. Suddenly on the 24th, 25th, 26th, you're feeling a lot more emotional because the moon is in Pisces, which is emotional, and now Mars and Mercury are in Cancer, which is also the same way. Okay? So a couple days where you're feeling kind of emotional, but again, a lot of the benefit there is deeper devotion, connecting to things that are deeper than just intellectual, and that's very important. And so, I'm sorry. And so, one second. All right. Sorry, something on my computer there a little bit. Okay. So then on the 27th and 28th, the moon is in Aries. And this moon in Aries is very much about starting a new cycle, starting a new way of being. And whenever the moon goes through Aries, there is a quality of like rebirth and renewal. When it's going through Pisces, there's a theme of letting go. That's why we can sort of let go in a kind of in a sort of unhealthy, surrendered kind of way, or we can let go in a way that's very spiritual. And again, it's about meditation and higher spiritual practices. This leads to the birth and the rebirth of Aries, right? That's why Pisces also has that quality of the in-between life state, the dream state. Again, this is why with Pisces we can be kind of mystical and metaphysical, but also kind of escapist and dreaming and not paying attention and all of that. So all of that is before birth. You can think of all those things that are happening before something is born, right? So then the moon is born again on June 27th, new moon in Aries. Of course, that first nakshatra is Ashwini, right at the beginning. Again, all the texts say it very clearly that Ashwini was placed at the head of the ram. All the nakshatras and rashis align in the same space in the sky. Nothing ambiguous about it. It's in all the texts. And again, so on the 27th, we really hit the ground running, both horses charging forward, right? At the beginning of the zodiac. And then again on the 28th, then it's the nakshatra Bharani. We have the nakshatras and rashis aligned and showing all these life lessons. So you can expect that on those days. You want to cultivate some patience, right? Patience is a real virtue. And this will be important especially on the 28th. And this, this nakshatra of Aries is really the one where we realize the sort of quality of our actions and how much those actions have a consequence. So you could really feel that on the 28th, that quality of Bharani, which is the consequences of our impulsive actions in Ashwini. Very important. And so notice that. It's related to the god of inhibition and restriction called Yama. And those of you who practice yoga know that there's the yamas and the niyamas, the restraints. And so you could feel that sense of restraint on the 28th. The 29th and 30th, the moon is in Taurus, back in that exalted state where the month began, and opposite Jupiter, a couple days away from the eclipse at that time. And so it's sort of foreshadowing on June 30th and moving forward. So but the month ends on that Taurus in that Taurus lesson, which the Taurus lesson is certainly one that supports family, friends, comfort, joy, and being connected to those things that are most important, and not getting sidetracked by battles and other kinds of things. And so the aspect of Jupiter at the end of the month shows this quality of teaching and higher wisdom to also be important at the end of the month. if people had some questions, they could ask some questions, especially if they're related to this. If it's something personal about reading somebody's chart or some other thing, then I'm not going to answer it just because it's just irrelevant. It's not irrelevant, but it's impossible to read. So, but, you know, questions that have to do with what might be, especially what I just talked about, are most important. So I'll do an eclipse video. I've already done many eclipse videos. My members get it for their sign, but I've done things on the eclipse in my 2019 forecast. And yeah, I'm going to be doing an eclipse update. Somebody asked about certification level 2, and Daniel has to tell me, that's for those who graduated level 1. And those who graduated level 1, if you graduated it before, actually the truth is right now I've put level 2 kind of on hold. I'm sort of redoing it. I don't feel like repeating what I said about Ashwini and Barney. You can listen to the message again. June travel okay in general. That's not again, you're asking a question, is traveling in June okay in general? Think of how many people are going to be traveling in June. Use common sense with astrology, okay? Please, start using common sense. How could anyone say that nobody should travel? June is not good for travel in general. Think of how many people are going to be traveling without any problem. So please keep astrology in a realistic context. Okay. If I did a Rush video, somebody's reading my mind. Did you know that I went and I met Geddy Lee of Rush recently, and somebody knows that and was asking about it. I guess that's why they were asking, because they saw that I met Geddy Lee. Those of you who know about Rush and Geddy Lee know that. Let's see, I'll pull this over. There's the picture of me with Geddy Lee. There it is. And yes, I got his birth time. There you see it. That's me speaking to Geddy Lee. If you don't know who that is, you need to get a musical education, okay? But yes, I do plan on doing a case study. He told me about where he was born, I'm sorry, about his birth time, and I managed to do a pretty good rectification. And so, yeah, I played some music before. It's interesting to see the questions about music and stuff. So, just looking at a couple things here. Online course. Yeah, so again, the level 2 online course, I'm redoing it, but stay tuned. See, people have these names, Daniel Septembra, and I don't know who that is. I don't know if you've studied with me before, or if you're just somebody from the public. If you've graduated from the level 1 course, you're eligible. Other than that, you're not even eligible. So, what is strong about Saturn? Well, I explained it quite a bit in this video, so just listen to it again. Again, I don't mean to be rude, but I've been speaking for an hour, and I just don't want to go back and re-explain things. I have all these videos about Saturn as well. Maybe listen to videos about me talking about Saturn. Can you repeat something else? No, I don't want to repeat. Okay. You're adulting us. Yep, I am adulting you. Yeah. No, it's actually just after a month. After a month. After an hour, I'm fine to answer some questions, but it's just go back and repeat things. I've been talking for an hour straight. It does get a little tiring. So yeah, some people are interested in Rush and all that good stuff. Yeah, so someone said astrologer said stuff about traveling in May to avoid. Again, I did a recent thing. You know, I made a recent update on one of my social media where there's just so much. In some ways, again, I don't know what the astrologer said or whatever, because people misrepresent things too. But you would never, because people are so used to hearing things like this, they think that it's actually reasonable. That astrologers say things like, don't travel in May, don't travel when Mercury's retrograde, don't do this when that happens, don't do this. And again, it's crazy, honestly. Or even just all the gloom and doom, like things are so bad, they're so bad, bad. You know, there are people all over the world having amazing things happen right now. The greatest moments of people's lives are happening right now, all over the world. Constantly. The greatest things that have ever happened to people are happening right now. Never forget this, okay? Please remember this. And, you know, I don't know if you know, even like watching, you know, I like to watch some sports. I like, especially when it gets to be important times, like important tournaments. Like, for example, I don't follow baseball all season or basketball all season or whatever. But at the end of now that there's playoffs, I kind of start watching, because then things get really interesting because the pressure gets on. And I like watching the highlights and seeing like the best and what happens when the best is brought out in focus. Because seeing things at their best, seeing the best athletes in the best tournaments, playing each other, you know, you see like the culmination of human potential or whatever. I like to see all those kinds of things, not just in sports, but in anything. I like seeing anyone do something with excellence. There's just something about excellence and brilliance that I like to watch it. And I think you should look at it in that way. Rush is a great example. Whether people like them or not, actually. Even if you don't like their music, they're a representative of something. Geddy Lee, for example, and all those guys of excellence like you've never seen. They were around for 40 years. The same three guys. They stayed together making incredible music. Again, even if I didn't like their band that much, I would be interested in seeing like interviews of them and whatnot, because you see people who are just absolute masters of something and hear what they think, hear how they see things. And you see a lot of things that are common, like they're humble and they're driven and they're realistic, all these great traits. But anyway, the reason I'm mentioning this is because when you get to, like, you know, something like sports, and you get down to the end of something, then you start to see this sort of culmination of how people really, excelled. And so now that we're, down around the end of the basketball season, you see all of these people having great moments. So again, and then you come back to astrology, and it's like all the astrologers are like, oh my God, everything is horrible and terrible and the world is ending. And yet I'm watching like stadiums and entire cities full of people jumping out of their skin with elation because their team just won. The Toronto Raptors just won. There's going to be the NBA playoffs with the Warriors and the Raptors, and certain baseball players are just out of their mind with delight. The greatest moments of their life are happening right now. So don't ever forget it, okay? Get out of your bad astrology bubble. And this is kind of part of what I was talking about with this Rahu and Gemini. I'm not just talking about bad teachings or philosophies in politics and whatnot, but I'm talking about things like astrology and all the bad information that we're just bombarded with now, and we don't have any discrimination. So it's great that there are things like YouTube and all of that, because we have a lot at our disposal, but most of it is junk. And I'm not talking about anyone in particular or anything in particular, so don't read anything else into that. I'm not just talking about astrology or anything. I'm talking about in general. We're bombarded with so much information overload, and we kind of believe all of it, and so we don't believe any of it, and we don't know anything. And then again, we tend to, because now, I will just say this about astrology, because astrology has now become something that people aspire to. I've seen a big shift in it. Now you have so many people that just say anything, and they're just triggered. They don't know how to read these things very well. They don't really interpret them very well. K2 Jupiter, and now you got Pluto with Western astrology. K2 Pluto Jupiter. K2 Saturn Pluto. Oh my God! It's like the darkest, worst times ever in history. It's like, my Lord, chill out. This is not the worst time ever in human history. We have more people alive on the planet. There's so much that we need to fix. There's no question. It's a very tricky, difficult time in a lot of ways. Politically, culturally, there's all kinds of shifts going on. There's all kind of dark rise of nationalism, all kinds of potential right now. That's difficult. But to say that it's like the worst time ever for human history and the darkest times ever and all, it's just too much. It's too much. We can't lose our discrimination that badly. No matter how bad it is, let's say, for women or for black people or for immigrants or this or that. It's not the worst ever in human history by any stretch of the imagination. So yeah, we got some stuff to do. And I'm not shy to speak about how difficult things are. You know that. But again, we can't lose our mind over it. We can't be like, and I know because people are used to hearing astrology spoken about in ways that are too polarizing and extreme and ungrounded, that we can think of it that way. So try not to think of it that way. Try to see it as explaining things the way they are, and then try to connect with the way things are. Because it's explaining the reality. It's not explaining the dark fantasy world. We're not living in the dark fantasy world. We're actually living in the reality world. And think of all the people who have nothing to do with astrology, and sometimes they're much happier. I'm not saying people shouldn't look at astrology, but I'm saying I notice, and I talk about this, it's not the first time you've heard it, but it's very easy to misuse it and just upset yourself needlessly because you don't really even understand it well enough yet. So that's why I try to educate people and teach people that it's just showing the world that you see. And it gives us a glimpse of what's coming, but not just the bad stuff, or not just the darkness and the fear and the stress and the problems, but all the beauty as well. Realize the astrology is showing the world the way it is. So how is it showing it the way it is? With all the benefit, the detriment, the glory, the pain. It's showing all of it. And notice yourself if you're learning astrology or if you're hearing an astrologer saying things that are just way out of line. Again, you don't have to say anything about it, but just be like, you know what, I don't know, this person, this is just really not reflective of reality. The reason that we're susceptible to that, though, isn't because of the astrologer, it's because of your mind. Because you start listening to other people and you stop checking in with what you know to be true. So check in with what you know to be true. Again, this is why it's also so important to do spiritual practices. The reason people get so ungrounded and then astrology makes them more ungrounded is because they're not being grounded to their spiritual sadhana and their practices and their devotion and all the stuff you hear me talk about. I'm talking about it because that's what you need to stay connected with. And when you stay connected with that, you're not forgetting the world you're living in and forgetting all that grace and all of that stuff. It's very easy to just forget all of that stuff if we're never doing spiritual practice. And by the way, going on YouTube watching videos isn't spiritual practice. Sometimes it's exactly the opposite. I'm talking spiritual practice, like maybe yoga, meditation, or pranayama, or chanting mantras. I'm talking about things you do when there's probably no one else around and your eyes are closed and that's a spiritual practice, one of the best. In fact, one of the only ones that truly shifts consciousness. If you're not doing that on a regular basis, you shouldn't wonder why you're stressed out, triggered, confused, wondering what's going on, grasping at anything anyone is saying. And I'm not trying to be insulting, I'm just saying. Because we can easily blame the astrologers who are saying these things and this and that, or whoever it is, not just astrologers, but they're also a reflection of that ungrounded lack of spiritual practice. They're doing their best. That's why I'm not trying to criticize anyone, even though it sounds like it, and I don't mean it to. Because it's not the people. They're doing their best to try to help. I truly believe everybody's doing their best. And it's not just a feel-good slogan. If I didn't think it, I would say it. I think everyone is doing their best in general. Some people have a harder time, but especially people who have these channels and anybody who's sharing anything with the astrology and whatnot, because I know what it takes to show up and do it and to get in front of a camera and say this stuff and have people say things back. So I'm by no means saying that these are bad people or anyone is a bad person or anything. It's not that at all. But you'll see the level of spiritual practice a person has based on their worldview and what they're talking about and how grounded they are and how triggered they are and how all of that. You'll see the level of spiritual practice that's totally in relation to those things. And again, are they describing the world as you see it? Are they describing the world as someone who you would like to listen to sees it? Because there are people who describe the world in other ways. Again, if it's not just a fantasy that one day we're all going to, sprout fairy wings and become enlightened. No, but at least something where you feel like you're in the same world and there's some hope and there's something reasonable about it. Anyway, I'm going off on this a little bit more than I thought I would. Because I think it's really important, and I'm definitely also very keenly aware of the Rahu and Gemini thing that's going on now, that's going to be going on for another year or so, where we're trying to work through this. And I definitely feel like I'm part of helping people try to understand that, and rather than being part of the problem, hopefully being part of the solution where I can help people see that, again, it's fine. It's fantastic that we live in an age where the sort of democratization of information, where you can get access to so much. But with that comes a lot of pitfalls, a lot of information that's not very good. And the central locating point of all of it is you and your consciousness, your level of awareness, your connection to the heart. You're the one who is deciding what you're paying attention to. You're finding the things that are congruent with your mind. So if you're finding things that are this way, it's because your mind is looking for that explanation. It's an ancient teaching that you find the guru that you're looking for relative to what you're ready to hear. And a lot of people don't like what I say because I don't play into all that. So they go find it somewhere else. That's fine. I'm not everyone. Everybody doesn't want to hear what I have to say, and that's okay. So you're finding exactly what you're looking for directly related to your own mind. Everything is an extension of that. So anyway, that's a good way to leave June as well because of all that Gemini energy, that Gemini pile up, and even starting off talking about, really connecting with good information and not getting goaded into battles or not getting sidetracked by weird dramas or anything like that. It's a big lesson for June, and I hope this was helpful for you to hear, and share it with others if you think they'll also appreciate it. So